Not too long ago, I was at a hotel and I was checking in. It was all kind of a blur because I was running late, So I checked in and I got my key card and I went to the room and dropped my stuff and then had to get to my meeting where I was going. And so later that night when I returned to the hotel, it had all been such a blur, I totally forgot what room number I was in. And so I went up to the kiosk and I asked the receptionist, I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, can you tell me what room I'm in?" She said, "No problem, ma'am. You're in the lobby." There's hospitality at its finest, people. As we begin this series, this 10-week series I'm calling Chapel So Bright, Gotta Wear Shades, we begin with a look at hospitality, at the word welcome. Welcome is the verb that we might use when thinking about this value of hospitality. We welcome. And this is kind of the first of the 10 core commitments that as a group of people, the people in the listening sessions, the people who came for our Saturday workshop, fine-tuned for such a time as this team, the first core commitment we have on our list is welcome. And I'm going to get into welcome here in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to set the whole series in context. We've got a little bit of work to do today, Chapel. And so this is one of those days, right, where in the business we call it Low Sunday. You know why we call it Low Sunday? Because after Easter, everybody's like, well, I did my church duty for the month, right? I can check that off the list. I don't have to come today. But here you are on Low Sunday. But it's kind of like at home, when you have people over and everybody goes home and then it's just, the family left or the closest friends and you got to pick up the house and then you kind of roll up your sleeves and you get busy doing dishes. That's the kind of day we're going to have today here at the chapel, right? The guests have gone home. It's mostly just us home folks here. And so I'm going to invite you into the kitchen. We're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to do dishes. And if you're a guest with us today, you're not a guest anymore. Because you're here today, we're going to invite you to the kitchen. So roll up your sleeves. You're going to do some dishes with us, all right? You get the picture. We're going to do some work today. With this grant that we received, the team kind of finalized the concepts that were devised during the listening sessions and at that Saturday workshop, and then they took the language and they kind of fine-tuned it. And they came up with these beautiful statements. And I was mostly an observer in this whole process, but I got to tell you, I think you guys nailed it. I love what we came up with. Now, if you have your bulletin today, I want to invite you to keep it handy. We're going to refer back to it from time to time, not to the worship order, but to the weekly spotlight there. Because you guys came up with some beautiful language. I want you to find right under the line that says, "Our missional aspiration." And I want you to read that with me. Are you ready? Here we go. Chapel by the Sea aspires to be a beacon of God's love, inviting people into a vibrant life with Christ. I love that, and I think it's beautiful. I want to go ahead and read the next part where it gets down into how we do that. So it starts with as an interdenominational. Ready? Read that with me. As an interdenominational Christian faith community, we share common commitments to welcome, include, love, and respect all people, engage people through thoughtful worship, inspiring music, and honest exploration of Scripture, nurture authentic community and deep spirituality, growing in our faith together, transform our world through active service and advocacy. So here at the chapel, we're an interdenominational church. We use that word in that language, and it's a long word, and so I want to unpack that word for just a moment. Some might say we're non-denominational, and we're not going to get too upset if we say non-denominational. I personally prefer interdenominational because non-denominational is kind of negative, right? Like, "Ooh, we don't like the denominations. We're not denominational." No, instead we say, "Hey, you're Presbyterian? Awesome. You're Lutheran? Fantastic. Methodist? Great. Catholic? All right. Baptist? Come on." And we say, let's bring our denominational identities and figure out how to do church together. Got to kind of like, somebody used the word melting pot the other day. We're like a melting pot of all the rich traditions that we have brought up in. With that word interdenominational, some may say, well, how do you do that? How do you bring all those different ideas about God and the faith and Christianity? How do you bring all that together? And here's how you do it. You become non-doctrinal. And so here at the chapel, we're a non-doctrinal church. I told you we're going to roll up our sleeves. Here we are. We're doing the work today. We're non-doctrinal. Because let me give you an example. I come from the Baptist background. Any good Baptists here? Yeah, me and two others. Awesome. Baptists have this thing. The Baptists in the room, we got this thing about baptism, right? That's why we're Baptist. And most Baptists believe that you have believers' baptism, right? You don't baptize infants, you baptize people when they are old enough to accept Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior. So it's a believer's baptism. And there's a special way that you do that. You don't do it by pouring, and you don't do it by sprinkling. You know how you do it, right? I feel like sometimes I want to baptize some of you. Just kidding. It's a joke. Baptism by immersion, right? And so let's say the church here, the chapel, wanted to have a doctrinal statement, and we got to baptism. Then me and the two other Baptists in the house would be like, all right, we're going to do baptism now. We're going to do it by a believer's baptism, and we're going to do it by immersion. And in fact, since everybody in the chapel has been immersed when they were baptized, maybe we should just rebaptize everybody, make everybody get baptized by immersion. The Baptists in the house go, yay! Thank you. Thank you. How many of you would be excited about getting baptized by immersion? Oh, two or three? Okay, all right. All right, we'll do that. But you see how divisive that could be, to have a doctrinal statement about baptism. So here at the chapel, we don't have a set of doctrines. And some people might come to you and say, well, how, I don't understand. So what do y'all believe at the chapel? And here's what you're going to say next time somebody asks you that question. Chapel by the Sea aspires to be a beacon of God's love, inviting people into a vibrant life with Christ. You're going to memorize that, right? We'll work on that. Try it with me. Chapel by the Sea aspires to be a beacon of God's love, inviting people into a vibrant life with Christ. See, the thing about doctrine is doctrine divides. Doctrine is the reason we have over 45,000 different denominations. And we got the people who want to baptize by immersion, and we got the people who are baptized as infants, all right? Well, we're going to divide over that, and so many more divisions. And so here at the chapel, we want to unify. You know, if you read John 17, I encourage you to do that. Go home and read John 17. Jesus prayed, we said this on Easter Sunday, that they might be what? One. And yet we divide. Here at chapel, we actually believe what Jesus wanted is important. And we try to bring that 45,000 plus denominations together in this one beautiful, kind of weird melting pot that we call Chapel by the Sea. And with that unity, How do we do it then? If it's not going to be unifying around a set of doctrines, how do we unify? We unify around a set of practices. What our team decided to call core commitments, a way of living and being in this world that we can kind of come together around. We unify around a set of practices. A lot of churches, and some that we were brought up in, are going to unify around a set of doctrine, not us. We unify around practices. There are 2 $5 words. I've used them before. I'm going to use them again. There's orthodoxy, right belief, and orthopraxy, right action. We unify around the second, orthopraxy, right action. Now, it takes a little bit of mind shift to do that if you were kind of raised in the other kind of church that unifies around doctrine. But once you get there, it's kind of liberating, and it's entirely biblical. I want you to think about the Great Commandment. You know what the Great Commandment is? Jesus was approached one day. They were trying to trick him. They said, "What's the greatest commandment?" And Jesus, this is Matthew chapter 22. We're in verse 15 here. Jesus said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor," what? As yourself. This is called the Great Commandment. And it's not about you shall believe this and you shall believe that. It's an action, right? It's a practice. You shall what? Love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself. So if that's not good enough for you, let's talk about the early church and how they oriented their life together. We're in Acts chapter 2, the very beginning of the church. We're in Acts chapter 2, beginning with verse 44. All who believed, there's the word belief, hold on to that. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. Well, Pastor Rhonda, they used the word belief in that passage. Yes. As individuals, they believed, and as a communal body, they acted. Individual belief, corporate practice. That's how we organize our life together here at the chapel. All right. Are you with me? We're doing the dishes today, folks. And so here at the chapel, we have these 10 core commitments. And these, I didn't come up with them. The small team didn't come up with them. This was from the listening sessions with over 50 people involved in those. Another 50, or some of the same 50 in the listening sessions participated in this Saturday workshop. So 10 core commitments. They're printed in pretty colors there in your bulletin. It starts with the word welcome. Read the pretty colors with me, if you will. Ready? We welcome, gather, pray, give, serve, forgive, sing, grow, respect, love. Over the next 10 weeks, we're going to dive into these, and we're going to begin today with the first one, welcome. Welcome. When our consultant did the listening sessions, again, 50 people or so involved in those, he wrote down the words that he heard, and he marked how many times he heard each word. And there were some beautiful words. There was faith, and there was love, and inspiring, and musical, and service, and lots of cool words, beautiful words. But the one word he heard more often than any other word, welcoming. And so he put together this word cloud, and what a word cloud does is it takes the word that's most often used and makes it big and bold, and the other words are smaller around it. So in the word cloud he created, you know what you see in that word cloud, right? Is the big word, say it with me, welcoming. That's what you told him this church was about. And maybe that's why I love you so much. Welcoming. You see yourselves as a welcoming congregation. I see you as a welcoming congregation. And it makes sense. Here we are in one of the world's best tourist destinations, if you ask me. Visitors from all over the United States and around the world. Anybody here from Germany today? Hey, there they are. Any other countries represent? Canada? We've got some beautiful Canadians. Any other countries here today? All right, so we got some Germans and some Canadians, and the rest of us are good old United Statesians, right? We get tourists from around the world that come here, and so it makes sense that hospitality and welcoming the stranger would be one of our top priorities, one of our core commitments, but it's also biblical. Our faith teaches us that we are to welcome the stranger, and so we read about Jesus here today. He's at the table, he's at the house of one of the most prominent Pharisees. And he's been invited to this dinner, and so there are other people at the table, and he notices them kind of jockeying for position. This is a thing in a lot of other countries and in the past, that people will be positioned at the table in seats of authority or power. And so kind of people are jockeying for the best seat at the table, and Jesus notices this, and he talks to them about humility. And then he turns to the host, and he says, the next time you throw a dinner, don't invite your family, don't invite your friends, don't invite your rich neighbors. Go out and invite the poor and the crippled and the lame and the blind. And somebody at the table, and it appears to me that this person's trying to change the subject. It's getting a little, testy there at the table. So this guy tries to change the subject, and he says, well, blessed are all who break bread in the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus turns to that individual, and he tells a story. And the story is the story we call now the parable of the great banquet. And so you have the owner of the house, and he's throwing this great banquet, and he invites his friends and his family and his rich neighbors, and all of them have excuse, one after the other. Oh, well, I just got a new boat, and I've got to go, test it out. Oh, I just got my new iPhone. I got to get it all set up. Right? All these excuses were coming, so nobody was coming to the banquet. It was already prepared, and so he tells his servant, and he says, go out and get the poor and the crippled and the lame and the blind. And so the servant goes out and gets all of those folks that he can find, and so they're all at the table. There's still room. And the owner says, find the people behind the hedges. Find the people behind the hedges and bring them to, I want my house filled with people. And so the servant does that. And so this story that Jesus told was to help them see the kind of welcome that we are to extend. Yes, it's awesome to have people who look like us and smell like us and think like us, but to be the welcoming church that I feel like God is calling us to be, we'll go out and we'll find the people behind the hedges, and we'll say, come and join us at our banquet table. Welcoming is who we are, and welcoming is who we still need to become. That's radical hospitality. There's a quote that I see on social media from time to time, and I love it. And sometimes there's a picture of a big, long table, like a Thanksgiving dinner for 100 people. And the quote is this: when you have more than you need, build a bigger table, not a higher fence. And so here at the chapel, we're building a bigger table. We're building a table that's big enough for me. There are tables I've been excluded from in my past as a woman in ministry, but here at the chapel, there's a table that's big enough for me. And maybe the table's big enough even for you. We're building a bigger table here, and that's one way that we're doing our best to shine like a beacon of God's love. Inspiring people, inviting people to a vibrant life of Christ. How are we a beacon of God's love? We shine the light of Christ in so many ways. And chapel, I got to tell you, you're already doing it. Because in my mind, the chapel's so bright, you got to wear shades. You got to wear shades. You look good. You look good. You look good in those shades. Go ahead and put them on. We're getting ready to take some pictures, folks. Chapel's so bright, you got to wear shades. You see it says Chapel by the Sea right there on the side. Chapel's so bright, you got to wear shades. Now, maybe this is your first time visiting with us and you got a little taste of how weird we are. But you also get a free pair of sunglasses. Now, a caveat, everybody who knew about this said, are they for the eclipse? No! Do not wear these and look straight at the sun. Do not. Chapel's so bright, you gotta wear shades. After church, I've already told you we're taking a group photo, and now you know why. You see, when you're a beacon of God's love, you're shining God's light at all times, not just on Sundays, but Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Friday, and even on Saturdays. So you take these sunglasses and you go shine the light of Christ. You go be the beacon of God's love, welcoming all people, even the people that you find behind the hedges, especially the people that you find behind the hedges. Y'all look good. So cool. So the choir is going to sing. We'll serve Holy Communion. And then we'll put our sunglasses back on and go outside and take a beautiful group photo. The loveliness I see in the room is overwhelming.